Welcome to Pleasurology Island. I'm Freethought Steve, the lone pleasurologist. Welcome to another meeting of the pioneers of pleasurology, where we try to sort through the problematic aspect of human life that is our sexuality and pleasure. Our goal is to make our lives as enjoyable as possible, both in the present moment and on down the line in the future, so that we want to be intelligent pleasurologists, not just impulsive, careless pleasurologists, because that way lies problems. I told you last time about the carefree sexual life in the Marquesas Islands, in the Polynesian Islands in general, and in the Marquesas was what I finished up with, where it was common for the teenage youngsters to have sex with whoever they felt like having sex with, without any interference from the adults, which is, not that different from our situation today, except that they probably had a lot easier time of it. I think our culture is still very much mixed between being sex negative and sex positive, and young people have asserted, basically the younger generation, starting with my generation back in the first wave of the psychedelic counterculture in the 1960s and 70s. From that point on, young people just asserted our right to have sex without having to be married, which was a big cultural change from the way it was before that in the 1950s and early 60s, when if you had sex and were not married, it was a really big deal and a big scandal. And your parents were really unhappy with you. People would get sent to jail. Or I knew a guy who got a young woman pregnant in Utah, and the judge gave him the choice of going into the army or getting his tubes tied, having a vasectomy, and or going to jail. So he had a vasectomy, and he was resentful about it for the rest of his life. His ability to have children had been taken away from him by the judge. Anyway, things changed, fortunately, for the better. I know another woman, a woman who was growing up in the 1940s and 50s, I guess, probably in the 50s, and she got pregnant, but the guy that got her pregnant skipped town, and so she had to get married. Her parents forced her to marry another guy, an older guy that she wasn't in love with, but who would marry her and pretend to be the father of her child. And it was an unhappy marriage that eventually ended in divorce. So now things have changed, and the one thing that I wanted to say after reading you the sections from Love in the South Seas by Bent Danielson about the free and easy sexual ways of Polynesia, was that if we adopted those ways, just took them over wholesale, which is to some extent what young people are doing, we'll be in big trouble, which we are in big trouble. The Marquesas Islands, where they had such a free and happy sex life, was a stop for whaling ships in the early and mid 1800s. Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, his first bestseller was a novel called Typee, and that was about when his whaling ship from New England ended up in the Marquesas Islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in order to take on fresh water and to buy pigs and vegetables and other food to replenish the boat with food as well as water, and then to give the sailors a little bit of R&R, rest and recreation on shore. And you can imagine that the Marquesan women were very welcoming to the sailors, and the sailors, would often give them little gifts of things. And so there was an exchange going on there. And the Marquesas was such a pleasant place to be that Herman Melville decided not to get back on his whaling ship. He ran away and hid in the interior till his boat left, and then lived with the Marquesan Islanders for a while, and that's what he wrote his book about, Taipei. And he had a wonderful time because when he arrived, it was fairly recently that Western or American or European ships had started stopping at the Marquesas. And so there weren't too many STDs at that time. But by 1900, because the Marquesas had been a refueling station for the whalers, and the sailors had introduced STDs to the Marquesan Islands, and then the Marquesans themselves, were used to being, very free and easy sexually. So by 1900, on that Marquesan Island that was the stop for whaling ships, about 90% of the population of that island had syphilis by 1900. And so it's obvious that even though a free and easy sexual life would be very, very enjoyable in the immediate moment, particularly in an urban culture like ours, it leads to the epidemic of STDs that we have at the present moment. That is part of the realistic picture of what we have to deal with in making our sexual decisions. That we have to be realistic pleasurologists, not just idealistic pleasurologists. We can't live the way that we ideally would if we were out on a Polynesian island in the middle of the ocean and we were all healthy and just having sex with nobody else but the healthy people on the island. We could, and particularly having contraceptives, if we had contraceptives and a nice healthy population, we could be much more casual and spontaneous about our sexual encounters. But that's not the reality that we live in. We live in an urban reality with a high prevalence of STDs. So even though, because I am a very sex-positive person, not even though I am, but because I'm a very sex-positive person, I believe that it's essential to preserve our personal sexual health the best we possibly can. And the best way to do that is to be very selective in our sexual partners and have sex within the context of a relationship, someone that we have gotten to know over a period of time, and someone that we can trust, has been also sexually responsible, and we've both gotten sexual checkups so that we're not harboring any unknown sexual microbes, although even sexual checkups cannot check for everything. There are lots of viruses, for instance, the viruses that can cause cervical cancer are not detectable by a test. When a male has them, it's probably very difficult, if at all possible, to detect that particular virus, the cancer-causing virus. And so he could pass it to a woman, and she could have it for a long time, and it would be in her system, for a long time before it caused cervical cancer. And then if she had other sexual partners, she could pass it on to them, et cetera, et cetera. They would pass it on, and it would not be detectable. So that's why it's important to get checked for cervical cancer on a regular basis, to be realistic. To be a good pleasurologist is to be realistic about the benefits and risks of any behavior, and to get to know our sexual partners and to be very careful and choosy who it is that we have intimate physical contact with, the kind of contact that could exchange microbes and so forth. That's a part of being an intelligent pleasurologist, because once you learn how to have super euphoric sex, once you learn how to be really relaxed and how to create relaxed sexual arousal, create full consciousness orgasms, you realize how much pleasure our sex system, our organism, our brain, and the nerves that run down to our sex organs, and the nerves that run from our sex organs back up to our brain, that all create a state of sexual arousal and orgasm in consciousness. When you learn how to have cosmic orgasms, then you realize, wow, this sex drive I have is really special. It's really precious because it's capable of creating so much pleasure. It's fantastic. Now, it's important, it's good for us if we learn on our own through solo sex to create as much pleasure and as many cosmic orgasms as possible, because they will thoroughly satisfy our sex drive without even needing to have a partner, as long as we are capable of creating a fantasy in our mind that arouses our emotional brain to a high level of sexual arousal. And then we can use whatever erotica, whatever videos or magazines or artwork or reading, fiction, whatever. And we can use things like phone sex to give us a situation that is really, really sexy in our own mind, at least. Our emotional brain finds it really sexy. Depending on how much of it is realistic and how much of it is, like for instance, in the days when phone sex was my main sexual outlet, and or one of them, it was one of them. It was the same time I was going down to the nude beach, and they had just come out with VHS video, and Penthouse had just come out with some really good erotic videos for the first time that were fairly explicit, much more explicit than the Playboy videos were, that were just very much a tease. It's important, if you're getting turned on by a video, and what you get turned on by is the woman exhibiting herself to you, showing herself to you in a state of open freeness, showing everything that she has to show to you and being happy to do it because, in fact, she wants to turn you on. It's important that this kind of scene should not be just a few seconds long and then just disappear. And that's unfortunately the way it was. That's unfortunately the way it was back in the 1980s, when I was having phone sex and going to the nude beach and looking at these VHS videos. Even in the Penthouse videos, the scenes where the ladies had their legs spread and were really showing themselves without any reserve, the most exciting scenes were just a second or two long. And what we're trying to do with super euphoric sex is to have high arousal close to orgasm for a really long time without, and be very relaxed about it and know that we're going to have a high level of sexual stimulation the whole time. So that you don't have to try and rush and have your orgasm just when that one really sexy scene shows up, and all of a sudden that's there, and boom, now it's time to have an orgasm, but we haven't had time to build up to it and build up enough of a charge of sexual bliss in our consciousness for the orgasm to be a really cosmic orgasm. If it's a sudden rush to arousal and rush to orgasm, then the orgasm will be less powerful, it'll be narrower, won't be as broad, and it won't be as sexually satisfying or pleasurable. So that was when I first got into sexual video editing. And in those days it was pretty cumbersome and clunky, kind of, because I had to have two VHS videotape machines with a remote control for both of them. And what I was doing was playing, because I was trying to get long sequences of the good scenes with the women's legs apart and completely naked and being very sexy. The sexiest scenes that were only a couple of seconds long, I wanted to stretch those out so that I can enjoy them, so that I know I would have a long videotape full of nothing but, peak stimulating moments. So I would play the original tape on one VHS recorder on slow motion, and at the same time I would be recording that on the other videotape and on the other machine. And then when the good scene was over in slow motion, I'd slowed it down so it was a little longer than usual. And then, and in fact, I could pause it at particularly good moments if I wanted to, and then, resume it. And that was recording in real time on the other machine. And then I would have to pause the recording on that machine, pause the playback here, stop the playback on this machine, back it up again to the beginning of that same scene, and re-record it in slow motion while I was recording the other one. And I had to be, two different remote controls and trying to wank off at the same time and trying not to get oil all over the remote controls. It was, well, it's a good thing I'm an overachiever. That's all I can say, was that it was something that, took all my concentration to be able to do that. But then I would have a long videotape left over, or in the end, on the second machine, I would have a brand new videotape that was just my edit of the sexiest scenes. And nowadays, of course, it's easy to do that on the computer. It's much, much easier. But in those days, that was the only way to do it. And I would end up with a nice long videotape that I would know had really sexy scenes all the way through. And it wasn't just women with their legs spread. I liked to watch women standing up, dancing naked and performing standing up. In any kind of a situation where the women were deliberately showing their bodies to the viewer in ways that were nice and provocative. And I'm very sensitive to the emotional mood of the person who's performing. And so, I would like to select ones where the woman was happy, was clearly enjoying what she was doing. She was enjoying being sexy, and she was enjoying showing me her body in a sexy way. And so I would have a videotape that was full of that kind of real high quality sexual stimulation for me. And I would lie there naked, masturbating, and watch that video while I was talking to one of my phone sex friends whom I had, encountered one way or another. In those days, I didn't have enough money to do, I didn't have a credit card, so I wasn't into commercial phone sex. So I just had to find acquaintances here and there, ladies that I'd met one way or another, or that I had known for perhaps quite some time. Some of them I would call up an old childhood friend, and talk with her. And I happened to fortunately catch her at a time when she was going through a period of sexual liberation herself. And she had a boyfriend that she was being very sexy with, and he was helping liberate her because she, like myself, had been, she was the daughter of a minister, and I was the son of a minister. And so we both were liberating ourselves from our sexually repressive Christian upbringing. And so she was very happy to talk with me, and I never wanted to talk with a woman on the phone if I was making her uncomfortable in any way. I'm emotionally sensitive, so I would pay attention to that. And I would never try to have phone sex with a woman who wasn't interested in doing that. And so I would usually say when I would call them up, say, yeah, how are you doing, Steve? I was just having fun thinking about you, and wanted to give you a call. And anyway, had some excellent times because I had the fun of masturbating, and phone sex is a form of exhibitionism. I didn't realize this until I did some research on phone sex, and it turns out that the characteristics of people who enjoy phone sex are very similar to the characteristics of exhibitionists. And phone sex is a form of, it's like masturbation, but you have somebody there with you, and if you're lucky, she could be masturbating too. And those, of course, are the most fun situations. But as long as, I had one phone friend that I don't think she masturbated, maybe one time when I was talking with her, but we talked for, several years, and she always knew I was masturbating, and she didn't mind because she was an exhibitionist too. She was actually someone that I had met from the nude beach. And so in a way, the fact that she knew I was masturbating and that she was still continuing to talk to me the whole time and let me fantasize about her while I was masturbating, and she knew that. And so she was, in a way, giving herself to me over the phone. So she was really exhibiting herself to me through her voice, or just by allowing me to be there, and she was allowing me to masturbate while I talked with her and she talked with me. And I always tried to make it an intelligent conversation, and she always had stuff she wanted to tell me about her life, and I would always listen and try and give some helpful responses to her, perhaps. But in any case, we had a great time for years. So anyway, that's one way that we can have a very fulfilling and satisfying sex life, because after we would hang up, I usually wouldn't have an orgasm while I was talking with her, because, I never came right out and said, that I was whacking off while I was talking with her, although it was clear we both knew that was the case, and I knew that she knew that was the case. And that was the fun of it, for an exhibitionist, like for the guy who's being the exhibitionist. For me, it was only fun if I knew that she knew that I was masturbating and that she was okay with that. And while we were talking, that I had this big heart on, and I could occasionally I would make some kind of a veiled reference to something like, I have a big smile on my face or something. Nothing ever crude. You got to be very civilized, even though you can be wild. It depends on who you're talking to, of course, but you should suit your phone sex conversation to the person you're talking with and the situation you're talking with. Eventually, I had one phone sex partner who, was totally upfront about the fact that she was masturbating too, and we had no holds barred in what we told each other about what we were doing at that moment, and that was part of the fun. There was each of us knowing what the other was doing, and we could both be exhibitionists that way. And she was very much an exhibitionist in her personality, as well as in her sexuality. So these are all fun ways of satisfying our sex drive without running the risk of STDs. But there could be lots more. I drew up a whole list this morning. You could have a happy ending massage center. I think we should actually have a national happy endings department of happy endings. Like it should be one of the departments in government. And I think its budget should be at least as large as the defense budget. because the defense budget is just for preventing bad stuff from happening, hopefully, whereas the Department of Happy Endings would be 100% creating good stuff happening. And that should be at least as important as preventing bad stuff from happening. We should spend at least as much of our resources on directly creating euphoria. So suppose you had sort of like nationalized health care, nationalized sex care, so that we wouldn't have people running around in a state of sexual deprivation. We could say that everyone is entitled to get 3 massages a week at the Happy Endings Massage Center. And all the employees there, of course, are government employees. They have steady jobs. You know, our tax dollars are paying for the massage. But those of us who are getting the massage, we don't have to pay for the massage. That comes out of tax money. So the massages are free. And you see, and this is a good thing for our overall social welfare, because when people have a satisfied sex drive, there's going to be a lot less violence. We're going to need a lot fewer police. People are going to be much more happy with their lives. So, you know, this would have to work for both men and women, of course. And each person who went in to get the massage could choose their own masseur. You know, some guys might prefer to be massaged by another guy. Some women might prefer to be massaged by another woman. But some men would prefer to be massaged by a woman. And some women would prefer to be massaged by a man, as long as that man really knew what he was doing and was very responsive. The massage receiver has to always be in charge, particularly if it's a woman, you know, that to make sure the masseur is caressing her body in a way that feels good to her. And of course, the massage givers would have to be specially trained in the art of erotic massage, and that's an emotional art. It's not just a physical art. It's being able to be emotionally connected with the person that you're giving the massage to. And so if this is going to be a massage with a happy ending, the person who's going to get the massage would want to choose someone who is sexually arousing to them, someone that it would be sexually arousing for them to receive a massage from. And you would make an appointment with, you know, your favorite massage giver once you found someone who really turned you on and knew how to massage you in a way that was really arousing to you yourself. And some people have a talent for massage and some people don't. But if you do have that talent, or if you can develop that talent, it's great. You don't have to have great skills for reading, writing, and arithmetic. You don't need to know, you know, a lot of stuff intellectually necessarily. What's important is that you have an emotional sensitivity and a physical sensitivity to be able to imagine how the way that you are massaging someone feels to that person, so that you can make it feel as good as possible for the person. And so it's very much an erotic art. I have to say that it is one of my talents. I have always been really good at massage, and not all the massages that I have given people have been erotic massages by any means. Most of them have not been erotic. But with a few of the people that I gave massages to, and they were women, they enjoyed the erotic aspect of it. because, I treated their body like a temple. I mean, I basically was worshiping their body with my hands, and I never did any, inside the vagina lips or anything like that. I didn't do a real deep type of erotic massage. That wasn't actually necessary. I could sort of sense what was appropriate for the different women, and it didn't have to be. I didn't have to give them an orgasm while they were being massaged. With one of my clients, I did. She liked that, and she wanted that every time. And she had her panties on, though, and I would be just massaging her pussy through her panties. And she loved it when I massaged her naked breasts. So she was really enjoying, the whole massage. She loved to have me run my hands up the inside of one leg and through her, over her crotch, and then down the other side. You have, suspense is important. You want to take your time to get there. Massage is a kind of a Tai Chi activity, meaning you do it very slowly and smoothly. And so, I had practiced Tai Chi before I ever did massage. And so I always would do massage in a very Tai Chi kind of way, a very sensitive way. And you gradually get more intimate with the person. You don't just rush right into it, but you build up to it little by little, and then take it just as far as the person wants. One woman, I never touched her pussy at all. However, when I was massaging her legs and her feet, I would lift up her leg and move it around and open out her thighs so that her vagina and lips and pussy were all, visible to me. And I wouldn't have done that if she had resisted at all. But she didn't. She was absolutely happy with it. She liked it. She loved it. I would do the same with the other leg, And so she knew that she was showing me her vagina during the massage. I wasn't touching it. I was respecting that, but I was respecting her right to not be touched. But she was showing herself to me. I was allowing her to be sort of an exhibitionist. I was doing the moving of her body, but she was allowing me to do that. And so she was getting to satisfy her exhibitionistic impulses in a safe and enjoyable way. She must have found me sexually attractive, that she didn't mind at all. And in fact, afterwards, later on after I had finished, giving her massages, I saw her again, and she told me, she said, "I just want to tell you how much that really helped me, and how much good it did for her." In other words, I think it really helped her. It gave her memories that were very erotic to her emotional brain. Her emotional brain had been aroused during the massage by allowing herself to show me what she ordinarily had to keep hidden. And that was a bold thing for her to do. And it turned her on a lot. And so she could remember that later on masturbating. And this helped her to become more and more highly sexually aroused and to have more and more powerful orgasms. So I think she was thanking me for helping her have orgasms easily, because I had given her such a sexually arousing experience that every time she thought about it, it would turn her emotional brain on, and it was easy for her to get turned on enough to have an orgasm. So erotic massage can be very therapeutic for helping us develop our capacity for becoming sexually aroused. But I think if you had your happy endings massage centers for everybody, and people could go there from the time that they were teenagers or even younger children on up, if they wanted to have sexual experience. They would have the right to choose that, particularly when they reach puberty, and the sex drive becomes more insistent and wants to be satisfied on a regular basis. Then obviously being able to go and get a massage with a happy ending 3 times a week, maybe in the teenage years, you should be allowed to do it, every day, and then later on in life, scale back a little bit. But that would certainly be a way for young people to learn to become sexually aroused without any shame, and they could be relaxed while it happens. I think that was one of the great things when I was massaging these women who would become turned on by it, was that it was a totally relaxed situation. They didn't have to worry about things getting out of hand. I wasn't going to do anything they didn't want to do. They trusted me because they knew my personality was such that I was a trustworthy person who would never do anything to them that they didn't want. So they could relax, and it could take a nice long time. And this is the perfect situation to learn to be relaxed and sexually aroused at the same time, which is what we need to do for super euphoric sex and oceanic orgasms. We need to be relaxed and aroused at the same time. And that's what, was happening with these women, and that's what has happened to me. I haven't really gotten very many, erotic massages in my life. I've had a few occasions when I was sort of asking for it, but didn't really get it. I was asking for it wordlessly by lying there on my back with a hard-on, but the girl who was massaging me wasn't going to give me a happy ending. So anyway, I think that would be a safe way. Now, it would be safe because the masseur could wear latex gloves. If the masseur is going to be massaging more than one person at a time, or more than one person a day, let's say, it's just a good idea for anybody who's massaging a lot of people and is going to massage, if the massage is going to include their sex organs, where there might be sexually transmissible microbes, then it's better if the masseur wears latex gloves. Latex gloves are just like a condom, but they're for the hand. So it would prevent any microbes from getting on the hands of the masseur, and it would prevent the masseur from giving any microbes to the person that was being massaged, receiving the massage. So, and you would use lubrication. You would use coconut oil or mineral oil or other kinds of vegetable oil. Coconut oil scented with tropical flowers like jasmine or gardenia or little tiare flowers, bikake flowers from Tahiti. In Tahiti, they make coconut oil, which is scented with the flowers, and that's what they use for massage. And that would be a great thing to use. Or you could use any oil that you wanted and put in whatever essential oil that was good to you. The person who was receiving the massage should be the one to choose to pick out what scent of oil they want to have. And each person would have their own separate amount of oil that was poured out individually into cups for the massage giver to use, so that you wouldn't mix massage oil from one person to another. You would keep them in separate containers, and then that container would be thrown away at the end. Or the oil, whatever oil might be remaining, would be disposed of and the container washed. Because it's, you just want to be very hygienic, so you don't have to worry about STDs, because you want to be able to relax. if you're having to worry about whether this sexual interaction might possibly give you an STD, how are you going to relax? You just have to forcibly push that out of your mind and say, I just hope it doesn't. I just hope, that there's no risk here. It's much better if you know that there's no risk. If you've got, a certain partner that you feel very, very comfortable and healthy with, and you remain with that partner, exclusively as long as you're in a relationship with that partner. And then, when the relationship starts to fade, when the sexual attraction between the two of you starts to fade, it's better to start another relationship, but only after leaving the relationship that has run its natural course. Human sexual attraction doesn't remain at a high level for a lifetime. It only remains so from, maybe up to 3-4 years if you're lucky. And then after that, you can either say, okay, let's split up and form another relationship, or you can say, all right, let's stay together because we are very compatible emotionally and intellectually and in our interests and the things that we like to do, and we love being with each other and we love each other. So we'll stay together, we'll have sex together sometimes, the two of us, making it as sexy as possible, and then we'll allow ourselves to masturbate and have some kind of sex that will satisfy ourselves on a more daily basis if we want, and not be jealous of each other's masturbation. I think if a couple is going to stay together, they should give each other the freedom to masturbate as much as they want and not have to hide it from each other and not have to sneak around, because you want to have relaxed masturbation. And you want to have relaxed masturbation because you're not worried that, even if your partner comes in and finds you, your partner will just be supportive of it. Okay, great, wonderful, have a nice time, sweetie, enjoy yourself. Anyway, there are a lot of possibilities. Okay, I was talking about the Department of Happy Endings, massages with happy endings. And you could also be a great place for sandwich hugs. If people wanted to, the sandwich hug is where one person's in the middle and two people are on the outside. And if everybody was wearing satin pajamas, very thin rayon or satin or something very, very thin, but nevertheless covering the body, so that everybody was hugging each other, and it would feel like they were naked together. I mean, the clothing would not be really a problem in terms of it wouldn't disguise the feeling of our body, and you could have nice long sandwich hugs, and you could have either erotic or non-erotic sandwich hugs, and you could have slow dancing with wearing satin pajamas like that too. And the slow dancing could involve becoming aroused while dancing. But these would be at the massage center, at the Happy Endings Center, in a social situation, so that nobody was worried that the sandwich hug would turn into intercourse, or that the slow dance would turn into intercourse or anything like that. It would just be a situation where you could become sexually aroused and be affectionate and be held, in the affectionate arms of someone else, and have it also be an erotic memory that you could then use when you go home and you're having solo sex or having phone sex with someone, and you could be using that fantasy or having intercourse with your regular partner. You could bring that fantasy into your consciousness while you're having sex with your partner, and would help increase your level of arousal. So you could use the fantasy either if you were having phone sex with someone, or if you were having real sex with someone. either way, you can always use a fantasy to increase your arousal. But you have to have a sexy kind of experience in order to remember to have that, have that fantasy, or you have to have some kind of image in your mind that turns you on, that turns your emotional brain on, so that it increases your sexual arousal and increases your sexual pleasure. So anyway, I want to get back to talking about my sexual development, my personal sexual development. After being in the bathtub with mommy and showing her my penis, it was obvious that, exhibitionism was one of the natural impulses that my emotional brain generated. When my emotional brain recognized a situation as sexy, it gave me the emotional response of being sexually aroused, turned on, and at the same time, it gave me an urge to do something. It gave me the picture in my mind of something to do that would be fun in response to being sexually aroused by my naked mother sitting across from me in the bathtub, and that was to lift up the middle of my body and show her my penis. And that shows that I was basically an exhibitionist from birth. That exhibitionism was part of my genetic endowment. I didn't learn it from anybody else. Unless it was from my mother showing me her breasts in the bathtub. And that was, a sort of a general exhibitionistic behavior. And then my emotional brain had to figure out what would be the corresponding type of exhibitionist behavior for me. And since I didn't have breasts to show her, I showed her my penis. That was what my emotional brain felt like. So I think we should all accept exhibitionism as one of the natural components of our human sexuality. Our human sexuality has a number of different components that make it up, and one of those is exhibitionism and its complement, its partner, voyeurism or scopophilia, enjoying looking at someone, enjoying showing one's own body off to someone. They're a complementary pair of things that can be done simultaneously, and that's, I think, one of the natural ways for human beings to become sexually aroused. And we don't have an opportunity to do that very much because our society insists that we remain clothed almost all the time, except when we're in private. So it's like exhibitionism is officially against the law, except at a strip club. But at a strip club, it's only the women who are getting to be exhibitionists. Or if it's a strip club for ladies, it's only the men who are getting to be exhibitionists, generally. And that's what I liked about the nude beach, was that it was a place of mutual exhibitionism. Everybody could be simultaneously showing off their own body to somebody else and enjoying that somebody else was looking at them, but then also that other person could be showing off their body and I could be enjoying looking at her. So, and there was no money involved. So that way you knew anybody who was at the nude beach was not there just doing it for money, but they were sincerely enjoying it themselves. It was a pleasure for them to be at the nude beach. And so if they wanted to show off their body to me at the nude beach, they weren't doing it because I was going to pay them some money. They were doing it because they found it sexy to do that. And I found it sexy to look at their body. And I found it sexy to let them look at my body. So I'll tell you more about my adventures at the nude beach as our saga continues. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.